Hey everybody, I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the word. And today that word is omnipotent. Omnipotent. One of those nice $5 theological words we love to use when we're talking about God. Not only is he omnipresent and omniscient, I had to stop and think for a minute. He's all knowing. He's always present everywhere. And then he's also omnipotent. He is all powerful. So here today in John chapter 19, it leads up and you see the crucifixion. Or you see he's already been arrested. He's before Pilate, and then you see that he is crucified. He's beaten, crucified, and dies, and then he is buried. All in chapter 19, and as you look at the story, one that's familiar to us. As we look at it, it's amazing to think that the time that he was in front of Pilate and all the things that he could have said, but in our eyes, we would say, but he didn't. At the end of the day, he knew what God the Father's plan was. And so, as we think about that, you think about the religious crowd, Caiaphas and his group. They thought that they were getting their way. The people, the Jews that were yelling crucify him, thought that they were getting their way. Pilate thought that he was getting his way. Herod thought he was getting his way. All the soldiers thought they were getting their way. But when you take everything else away, when you strip it all down and you look at it, you realize that this was God's plan to allow it to happen. Now, God used the sinfulness of people. God used the arrogance of those who were in power, and even used that religious crowd in their pride, and he allowed their sin to carry out his plan. You think about, I mean, as many times as you've seen, as we talked about when we were in the Old Testament, think about those evil nations that came against Israel, and God used them as a tool of judgment. So in that same sense, God was allowing these people to have power against Jesus. Now we know, let me make sure I say this and be clear, nobody killed Jesus. He laid his life down and died. John chapter 19, verse 11, as he's before Pilate, is something that he says that I think we need to remember throughout this whole passage, knowing that God is all powerful. Notice what he says in verse 11. Jesus answered, "You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." Now, to be clear there as well, we know that God is allowing this. So, was he saying that God the Father has the greater sin for allowing it to happen? No. We know that can't be the case. So, who is he referring to? Most likely, he was referring to Caiaphas. Caiaphas had the greater sin because, as the one of the religious elite that had a greater knowledge of God, should have recognized that Jesus was telling the truth, that Jesus was from God. So, with that greater revelation that he should have had and already did have, and he stopped short of recognizing Jesus as Messiah, now he has the greater sin in that sense because he should have known better. It's one thing for the Romans, it's one thing for the Gentile world to not accept Jesus in that context and in that time because they didn't know God. But the Jews, that's why the Gospels, we talked about this Sunday, the gospel came to the Jew first because Jesus was a Jew. They were God's chosen people. So the message came to them, salvation came to them first. But when they rejected Christ, then the message went out from there. It was always God's intention. As you go through, it was always in the prophecy, it was always there. Even from the beginning, the promise with Abraham that all nations were going to be blessed through Israel, and it came by way of Christ. Now, circling back around to what we're talking about, the omnipotence of God, the all powerful God that we serve, he also allowed people like Pilate to have power. In this conversation that the two of them are having about, hey, are you a king? And what kingdom are you talking about? And as Pilate's trying to understand maybe a little bit more and really even worried about his own skin, right? He's worried about what maybe Caesar would say. What's the emperor going to say against him? What are all these things going to happen if he is actually crucified an innocent man? But as he talks about this, Jesus says, rest assured, you don't have any power. See, at this point, you get at the point where Jesus finally decides, I don't have to answer this. It's not going to get us anywhere. And Pilate, hey, are you not speaking to me anymore? Don't you realize the power that I have? And Jesus says, no, you don't have the power that you think you do. Tie that into us today. What can I leave you with today out of this passage? Know that God is all powerful. Know that there is no one that has anything against you. There is no one that has any power over you that God has not given to them. Now, that doesn't always mean that things are going to turn out the way that we want them to. But we also can recognize that God is in control. God has not relinquished control. He is still on the throne. And just as he was still on the throne when Jesus was crucified, just as he was still on the throne, even as he had to turn away from Christ while he was on the cross because he had your sin and mine on him. And at that time, I can't even imagine what it would have been like. But there was not a single moment that was outside God's control. Just the same as it was then, is the same as it'll be today, the same it will be forevermore. Because we serve an omnipotent God, an all-powerful God. Today, I don't know what today may have in store for you. I don't know what it may have in store for me. But rest assured, God is in control. God bless you. And I pray you have a great, great day.